Welcome to the Careers by Jen podcast, episode 219. Today on the podcast, Jen's theme is Redefining Success, because it's easier than defining the problem and possible solutions to it.
You're listening to the Careers by Jen podcast with me, Jen Swanson, the podcast that helps you to get the job, love your work, and advance your career. The North American definition of success has been, in many cases, and still is, this: a favorable or desired outcome and or the attainment of wealth, favor, or eminence. I would like to suggest something else. I want to suggest it's bigger than that. We'll get into it right after this.
Are you procrastinating? Do you want to start a job search but aren't quite sure where to begin? Is it all just a little overwhelming? At Careers by Jen, we have a 5-day Jumpstart Your Job Search Challenge to help you get unstuck and move toward finding your dream job. Every day for 5 days, you'll receive an email to your inbox that asks you to complete one task. Every task you complete moves you closer toward your goal. The best part about this challenge is that it's absolutely free. Come over to careersbyjen.com and you'll see the 5-day Jumpstart Your Job Search Challenge on the right-hand side of the screen. Click on the image of Jen, sign up with your email address, and you'll be 5 days closer to reaching your goal. Why wait when you can get busy? Visit careersbyjen.com after this podcast.
Thanks for tuning in, friends. I spent the weekend in lovely Seattle at a conference all about place and neighborhood and community. And while it was a gathering of Christian people from all over North America, and there were people there from New Zealand and from Australia, much of the content was applicable to humanity, regardless of whether or not you are a person of faith. And what struck me most about this conference was the repeated theme of connection and of conversation and of relationship building in a world that is increasingly fractured and divided, polarized, and isolated. Anxiety and loneliness are on the rise. People walk around faces down in phones, not talking to each other. We don't even know our neighbors in many cases. And sometimes we don't even know the people that we work with very well or at all. And all of that got me thinking about the term success and how we measure success. It used to be all about the bottom line, all about how productive you were at work, how much output you created, how many sales you got, what your quotas were, how fast you did everything. And yeah, that's all still really important. But have you ever noticed how often we measure each other and judge each other by what it is that we do? Now, I've told this story maybe before, so forgive me if you've heard it. I can't remember if I've told it at workshops or on the podcast, but I was in an airport once, and I ended up talking with a French woman who was visiting from France, and we were waiting around for a connecting flight, I think, and she was telling me about her adult son that she had gone to visit, and I quite innocently asked the question that we North Americans always ask when meeting a new person or chatting about somebody. I asked, "What does your son do?" And this woman got the look on her face, that look that one gets with someone when someone says something that needs some patient educating. And she proceeded to gently tell me that that is one of the rudest questions you can ask in France. And so I was sort of taken aback. I was apologetic. And at the same time, I was fascinated, because that's how we measure each other. That's how we judge each other. That's how we make small talk at those awful networking events. You know, the ones where people walk around with expert plastered on their name tags. I truly loathe those events because I find them very fake and competitive, and I don't know, but I digress. I often the first question when you approach someone new or when you're meeting somebody or they approach you is, so, what do you do? Well, in France and likely elsewhere in Europe, but I don't know. So if you do know, please let me know. Likely an acceptable question for me to have asked this woman might have been, what does your son enjoy doing? What does your daughter like to read? What do you like to do in your spare time? What she said to me was that getting to know a person's passions and interests and what they enjoy doing in life, finding out what they read or what they spend their time pursuing, those are all good and polite questions because people are not always doing what they want to do for work. And therefore, to judge someone or to form opinions about them solely based on their occupation is insulting and is such a disservice. What do you think about that? I mean, how about that? I was schooled by this woman in a nice way, and I really appreciated what she said, and I've thought about that exchange in an airport somewhere ever since. Because how many times have you been in a job that was just a job and maybe wasn't your dream career? Or maybe you were working your way up to something and you were starting at the bottom and doing something. Or maybe you have to work multiple jobs. Or maybe your role has all sorts of baggage attached to it. I can speak to that. Sometimes when Scott and I meet new people and they inevitably ask what we do, we have to decide in the moment whether to reveal that we are pastors, because people have a huge problem with that. In some cases, people have baggage and assumptions associated with that title. All sorts of bizarre responses happen, and they can be really, really uncomfortable. People start confessing why they don't go to church. I never asked that question. I don't care. That's between you and, your faith. It's nothing to do with me. But people have bizarre responses. And I get far less judgment when I say I'm a podcaster or I'm a teacher and, online educator or whatever. And most of the time I will disclose. I'm not ashamed of it, but I don't always do it because I know I'll be put into a box and labeled pretty quickly in the person's mind. And sometimes that labeling is hard to overcome. It's sad, really, how quick we judge each other because of the work that we do. In fact, we had neighbors once that wouldn't talk to us when they found out what it was they did. Before that, they'd been friendly enough, but I can only imagine that there was some deep hurt done to them in the past by a church, or some fear that we might behave in some strange way and try to convert them or something. I don't know what it was. It was really sad, and it was kind of frustrating because we're pretty nice and we're pretty easy to get along with. And so answering that "what do you do" question can actually be risky sometimes. Now, I've asked this question myself because, again, in our culture, it's just what you do. But I try not to do that now because it's hard. And it's hard when we're so programmed as it seems that we are. But I try to not ask that question. And when I have asked, "what do you do?" some people say things like, "I'm just a clerk," or "I'm just a fill in the blank." And isn't that sad too? Because that means the person responding is judging themselves according to what it is they do. I want to say right now, you are never just anything. And when somebody says that to me now, I will stop and I will say that. I'm just a cashier. I'm sorry. You're doing a huge service. The work that you do is important. We need you. And so I find that really demeaning and really unfortunate when people are self-judging in that way. Your occupation is only one tiny piece of who you are. Now, it can be your vocation, your passion, your calling, your dream, absolutely, and I hope that it is. But it can also be something you do for money, so that you can do all sorts of other things outside of your work. Your career might be super important to you, and if so, that's fantastic. How wonderful to be excited about work and what it is you do all of the time. That's a great goal to aim for. But it might take you a while to reach that if you're just starting out, and you might be doing that job. I started out serving tables as a server. They were called waitresses back then. And that's what I did while I put myself through school and carried on. Maybe you don't need to work and you're doing it because you love to do it. And it might not be a very high status job, whatever that means, but you're doing it because you love to connect with people. So my question is, how do you measure success in your own life or in someone else's life? What does success, what does that word mean for you? And what would happen if the next time you met someone new, you asked them a different question? I know it might feel weird, but what if instead of asking them what they do, you asked about what they're interested in, what gets them excited about life, what hobbies they enjoy? How would the conversation be different then, I wonder? And currently, how do you measure success in your career? Is it by how much you make? Is it by your title or your rank? Is it by how far you've advanced in your career, or by how often you've been promoted or received the Employee of the Month or some kind of recognition? Is it by how much you travel or you're in demand? Now, all of these things are good, yes, but is that the only way to measure success? We live in a stressed out society, more stressed out than ever, it seems, more divided, more angry, more hurting. Suicide rates are sky high. Depression in all age groups is growing. We are struggling as a species and a planet, and somehow I think we are missing something. Our measurement for what a successful career or a successful life is broken, maybe. Maybe instead of trying to keep up when the bar just keeps zooming up higher and higher is a self-defeating impossibility. And so maybe we need to reevaluate things. In a world where people are buying people off to get their kids into fancy colleges ahead of those who actually worked hard to get there, there's something wrong. In a world where family members won't speak to each other because of politics, where flesh and blood won't sit at the same table together because of who they voted for or what causes they support or don't support, there's something wrong. What does it mean to be a success as a human being, first of all, never mind as a family member or a boss or a coworker or a job applicant? How would you like to measure success? I don't know how you might answer. I don't have the answers, but I'm curious, so I'm asking the questions because I think we should think about this a little bit. What if how you measure success was based on how well you got along with other people in your workplace, in your neighborhood, in your community? What if it was, what if we measured success based on how many connections and friendships we foster and grow? What if it was based on the level of respect you earn and offer, or by how many people seek you out for advice or want your honest opinion? What if we measure it by how you are able to learn and grow and be mentored, or even better, how you mentor others? What if success wasn't just about advancement and achievement, but what if instead it had to do with how kind and compassionate a human being you are, how content you are in the work that you are doing, your job satisfaction, your purpose? What if you were excited to get up every day and go to work regardless of what that work was? Wouldn't that be success? Instead of racing to meet quotas and feeling a sense of dread when you look at your inbox and see how behind you are, what if you found pleasure in the tasks that you had to do and enjoyed the conversations you were part of? What if you knew your neighbors well and were an integral part of your community? What if instead of what kind of fancy car you drive or whatever your address is? What if success instead was measured by how connected you are to friends and family, and by how much purpose you found in just being? I wonder what the world would look like if we stopped competing so much and if we started reaching out and connecting. One of my favorite poets, Mary Oliver, who just recently died, asks this question: what will you do with your one wild and precious life? I wonder if changing how we think about success may make a difference to how content we are with what we already have. I wonder. Have a wonderful rest of your day, my friends, and thank you for listening. You've been listening to Careers by Jen with Jen Swanson. If you like what you heard, please share this. You know, if every single person listening today shared this episode with just one friend, our audience would be twice as big just like that. And the more people we can help with our content, the better. So help out a friend and help grow our audience by sharing this show with someone you know who would benefit from the content. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that, and together we can make a difference. Until next time, take good care.